So a few weeks ago, I watched a movie called Nightcrawler, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and directed by Dan Gilroy. And let me tell you something: this movie is a horror movie. The film was made to be, I think, a dark comedy or some sort of a drama, but this film is a scary movie. It's very disturbing, and it's disturbing because of the very evil and exploitative character that Jake Gyllenhaal plays. The film is about a guy played by Gyllenhaal named Louis Bloom. And Louis Bloom lives in Los Angeles, and he makes his living off stealing metal from fences and stealing nails and selling them to a small building contractor. So he makes his living as a thief. He steals fence wire, nails, things like that. And one day he sees a car accident, and they are people stuck inside of a car that is on fire. And police officers are rescuing the people out of the car so as to prevent them from being burned alive. And out of nowhere, a film crew pops up, and they are obsessed with filming the officers rescuing these people. They don't care about the people being stuck inside of a car that's on fire. They don't try to help the officers rescue the people from the burning car. They just want to film the misery that is happening. And the people who are stuck in the car, they're screaming, "Help us, help us." It's pretty dark. And so the cops rescue these people, but not with the help of this film crew that is merely obsessed with filming the misery so that they could quickly get the footage to a local news station to make money. They sell this footage to local news stations, and that's how they make cash. They make money off of people's misery. And they don't try to help the people that are stuck in these terrible situations. They just want to film it because it makes a lot of profit. And the phrase that they go by is, "If it bleeds, it leads," meaning that if the footage is violent, it's going to be a lead story in the night news, in the evening news. So Louis Bloom sees this, and he says, "Wow, I can make a lot of money out of this." So he buys himself a camera, and he also buys himself a police radio dispatch. And he listens in on the police radio. He listens to their correspondence, and he can hear the police talk, or he can hear the 911 dispatchers talking about various crimes that have been done, or reports about, a car accident, or some kind of a fire, or a home invasion. And he hears the address, and then he drives to the address, and he films the violence. And he films all sorts of miseries. He films a car accident. He films the aftermath, the bloody aftermath of a home invasion. And he makes a lot of money out of it. Tons of money. Now, he goes to a low-ranking local news station, and he tells this lady, "Hey, I have this footage of a really bad car accident. I want $15,000, things like that." So she eventually tells Bloom, "I really like your work, but I want you to get footage. If you're going to get footage of crimes, I want you to get footage from," and she was very specific in the film, "I want you to get footage of crimes done in wealthy areas. Especially crimes done in wealthy areas by minorities, Hispanics, blacks, things like that." So the movie is already illustrating to you media manipulation in order to justify a certain narrative. Narratives of prejudice, narratives that would be used as a pretext for racism. Reminds us of our own news media. So Jake Gyllenhaal's character, Louis Bloom, does this very thing, and he films miseries, and he makes a lot of money out of it. And there is one specific scene where he hears from the 911 dispatcher that a home invasion has been reported, in a wealthy white neighborhood. So he gets to the house before the cops even get there. And he sees the criminals who have done this home invasion getting in their big van and driving out. He rushes inside of the house with his camera. He sees the dead bodies. He sees a woman lying dead on the couch. He sees a guy dead. He sees even an old man dead in the kitchen, actually half dead in the kitchen, still alive and coughing, doesn't call 911, doesn't call for an ambulance, doesn't call for anything like that. He just wants to film it. He just wants to get the story out there. And so he films the misery. He gets in his car, he drives off, and then he stops on some street somewhere, some street corner somewhere. He gets his laptop out, and then he edits the video a little bit. He uploads it, and he sends it off to the local news station. And the lady who is directing the evening news, she loves it. And I think she gives him like $15,000 for it or something like that. Thousands and thousands of dollars she gives to this guy for this footage. And there is one guy in the studio who sees this footage, and he's like, we can't air this. And the director, this female director, she's like, oh no, we're going to film it. Absolutely. And then the guy's like, wait a second, but what about the faces? We can't just reveal these people who have been killed. We can't just reveal their identities. And she's like, well, we'll just cover up their faces. We're going to post this. And so she's not even aware, or she is aware, but she is ignoring and eschewing the realities of the morals that she is breaking, the reality of how she is breaking principle, the reality of how unethical she's being. She doesn't care. She's completely pushing that back to the back burner. She's pushing morality to the back burner. It's all about money and fame and attention. And so watching this film, I have to say that it was a horror film. And the reason why I say that it's a horror movie is because it's so realistic. The fact that people like Louis Bloom exist, the fact that we have seen so many people like Bloom running around looking to create and engineer headlines, looking to engineer stories or to misconstrue reality in order to justify a certain narrative, in order to justify consent to certain nefarious and evil behaviors, like prejudice, like racism, like tribalistic thinking, like ultra-nationalism. We have seen these characters, and they are all over the internet. And now with the internet, this type of behavior is so widespread because now they are, you have 1 million Louis Blooms out there. And they could be in an apartment somewhere in Brooklyn. No one knows who they are. They have evil aspirations of manipulating society in order to justify consent for some sort of evil idea or policy. But they don't have the power to do that. But now with the internet, they do. And so you have 1 million Louis Blooms out there, and they don't have to go to a local news station to do what they want. They can just go on their computer and do what they want. Or they could go send an email to a news station and say, yeah, I did this, and this happened, and it's a complete lie. And, Louis Bloom in this film, he will do things. For example, he goes to the house and he sees 2 dead bodies, but the 2 dead bodies, they're kind of far away. He goes to this one house. It's a different scene in the film. And there's two dead bodies, but the bodies are, in different rooms, or they're too far apart for his frame to fit them both at the same time. So he takes one body, he drags it, and puts it next to the other corpse, and then he films it because he just wants to get that shot. He manipulates the crime scene, he messes with the crime scene in order to get that shot. And then, near the end of the film, he sees that the 2 men who did the home invasion, who killed that family, they were 2 Hispanic guys, and he's the only one in LA who has an image of those 2 perpetrators. He knows how they look like, and now they're wanted. So now he sees another opportunity to take it, another opportunity to take advantage of in order to get a story out there and make lots of money. So what he does is he looks at the footage from his camera, and he sees, these two perpetrators, these two murderers going into their car. He sees their license plate. He looks up the license plate. He tracks it, finds out where the car is. Now he knows where the two perpetrators are. He goes to the front of the house. He spies at them. He waits for them to leave the house. One of them to leave the house. He follows the guy. He sees that the guy meets with the other gunmen who invaded the house and killed that family. And then he sees them at a restaurant. So then he calls up 911 and he says, "Officer, I want to make a report. I think I saw those two guys who did that home invasion." And now he's acting like he's just some poor civilian who wants to do the right thing, knowing that the cops are going to come and knowing full well that there's going to be a gunfight when the cops show up. And that is something that he could film, a gunfight between police officers and two criminals, so that he could put it on the local news. And to him, it's not about stopping criminals, even though he kind of presents himself that way. I just want to stop these criminals. I just want to, make sure that justice is done. But his motivation is power and money. And so he doesn't care about innocent bystanders that could be killed in the middle of a gunfight. He doesn't care about the lives of the police officers that could be taken away in this gunfight. All that matters to him is the footage and getting it out there and making that money. So the cops come, and just as was expected, a gunfight ensues. A bunch of cops are killed, and he gets that footage, and he makes a lot of money out of it. So the film was a horror movie to me. I was watching the movie, and I'm like, this is a horror movie. Because I've seen this sort of behavior. I've seen this sort of personality. Now, here's the thing. He is itching to get a story out there, right? He doesn't care if he's tampered with the crime scene. He doesn't care about the ethics that have been transgressed. He just wants to get the story out there. And I have seen this so many times on Twitter where you see these people, and there's a lot of people like this on Twitter, I noticed. They're sitting there on their iPhones 24 hours a day, and they're like, this breaking, this happened, breaking, this happened. And a lot of these people don't even care if the story that they're posting is verified or not. They don't care. Like, I remember that mass shooting that happened in Dallas. I think this was in 2015 or 2016. I think 7 police officers were killed by a Pan-Africanist, black supremacist gunman. And they said, okay, the identity of the gunman has not yet been revealed. And so I was on the internet scoping through the different websites, news websites, trying to see who did this killing. So then I went onto Twitter, and somebody had posted a photo of an African-American guy with an assault rifle. I think it was an assault rifle. And he was like, "This is the gunman." And I was tempted to post it. And I was like, maybe this is it, blah, blah, blah. Maybe this is the guy. I wanted to post it. And a bunch of other people on Twitter were like, "This is the guy, this is him, blah, 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 this is him, we found his photo." It turned out that guy in the photo was some sort of a Second Amendment enthusiast who was doing his open carry expression, and carrying his gun around. Wasn't the gunman. But so many people were just itching to post this photo and be like, "Yeah, we found him, this is the guy." And because of the internet, information is spreading around so quickly. So it's not like back in the old days where, you wrote the article, it got printed on the newspaper, the newspapers had to be distributed throughout the public. It took time, right? It took time for information. Now, it was relatively quickly, but it took time for that information to get distributed and for it to get conveyed to the public. Nowadays, information is literally distributed within milliseconds. I can go on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, and within milliseconds, it's on people's computers. So because information is being distributed so much faster through the means of the internet, that means people are rushing even faster to get information out there because they want to be Not just the person who posts information, but the person who gets the information out first. I want to get it out first. Now, this obsession did exist before the internet, of course. But again, it took time because you had to write the article, typewriter, editor, newspaper, distribution, all that stuff. Now, it's all on the computer. Everyone has an iPhone. Everyone has a laptop. Everyone has a desktop. Everyone's got a PC. And so now it's like, I got to get it out first. So because the time it takes to get information out is so vastly quick, so much vastly quicker than in the past, people are trying to get that information out faster, and that messes with people's judgment. It clouds people's judgment, and people will deliberately cloud their own judgment, or they will suppress their own discreetness and their own vigilance at the with the hopes of getting the story, with the hopes of being the first to get information out. And that is a huge problem. Denzel Washington actually talked about this, and he said that people are more obsessed, or they're more focused on getting the story out as opposed to making sure that what they're writing is actually verified and true. I myself have been guilty of this. I'll give you one example. I remember back in 2015, Fox News put a story out that El Chapo declared war on ISIS. Now, I saw it on Fox News. I said, okay, it's a reputable source. I'm sure Fox News is using a reputable source reporting this. I really wanted to get the story out there because I knew that it would get a lot of views, right? I knew that it would get a lot of people's attention. Now, part of writing and publishing stories and doing videos is getting people's attention. And you want to get people's attention, or else they're not going to read it. But at the same time, getting people's attention cannot be more important than truth and argumentation. Once it becomes more important than truth, again, it gets thrown to the back burner. So I put the story out there, and there was a guy I was working with at the time. He was living in Mexico, and he wrote me and he said, I think this story is fake. And I said, well, actually, I think he called me. I was talking to him, and a Mexican guy, Mexican activist who gave me a lot of information on the drug cartels when I was doing my documentary on Mexico. And he said, this story is fake. And I said, how do you know? He said, because if El Chapo is going to declare war on you, he's just going to kill you. He's not going to warn you. He's not going to declare anything. And deep down inside, I was like, I think this guy is right. And it turned out to be true, and Fox News had to retract the story and get rid of it. And it was a big embarrassment for all the people who posted it. And I wonder where Fox News got that information from. I'm wondering if it was some naive Fox News journalist who got a message from some internet troll or some Twitter troll and who told this journalist at Fox News, hey, I got this story, I got it out, you got to post it, come on, El Chapo declared war, I got a friend in Mexico who's got connections to Mexican intelligence. And this journalist got so excited that he or she published this story without verifying it, because that Fox News author was so obsessed with getting the story out there and being the first one to get the story out there. And that's the danger, the obsession with being first. Gotta be the first person to get it out there. Now, I understand you find stories that are, very fascinating, or you'll find a report that comes from a reputable source that is very fascinating, but even the report says, hey, this is just a report. And as long as you just present it as a report, then, I don't really have an issue with that. But once you start saying this is emphatic, or this footage, this is exactly what happened, there was no manipulation, then, you're clouding your own diligence. So I'll give you guys some more examples of what I'm talking about, just to demonstrate to you that they are, a million Louis Blooms out there. So, back in Germany, there was a story, during that whole migrant crisis hysteria that was taking place. There was a story. These two people who run a bar and a restaurant in Germany. I think it was I don't remember where in Germany, but it was somewhere in Germany, and they claimed, it was the restaurant owner and a lady who worked at the restaurant, they both claimed that a whole horde of migrants, Middle Eastern males, stormed their establishment and began to sexually assault the women there and began to just make chaos inside this bar and restaurant. And the story went viral. Of course, Breitbart posted up on the story. It went viral all over the internet, and people really believed it. Look, these evil migrants, they stormed this innocent restaurant, and they began to harass women and assault people and all this stuff. And it later turned out that the story was completely fake. It was fake. Now, the people who made the claim, they wanted the attention, obviously. They wanted that story to get out. And people like, people or media outlets like Breitbart, they also wanted to get the story out because, hey, it gets a lot of attention. They want to get these stories out because it gets a lot of attention, but also it creates a certain narrative. Just like the lady in the film Nightcrawler said, I want stories of people in wealthy white neighborhoods getting attacked by minorities. I don't care about violence happening in minority areas. I want to hear about violence happening in wealthy areas, the areas that have high socioeconomic status. Why? Because the people who are watching television, mainly white folks, mainly people who are in the wealthy areas, they start getting worried, oh, our neighborhoods are being attacked, and that grabs their attention, and that makes sure that there is a lot of revenue going into these big news outlets that are reporting these stories. There are other ways of doing this. It's not just people do these sorts of things not just to make narratives that would justify racism or prejudice. There are also stories that are put out there in order to push for war. And we've seen this sort of thing happen. Back in the 1950s, we know for a fact that Israelis were plotting to attack American buildings in Egypt, American government buildings in Egypt, in order to spark a war between America and Egypt. Because part of the plot was that the attackers would make it look like Egyptians were doing it and not Israelis. And the Americans, the plot was never really carried out, but the fact that people actually plotted this shows that, yes, they are people who plan to do these sorts of things in order to push a certain narrative. There was another case I remember hearing about recently. There was a guy on 4chan who created a chart. He fabricated this chart, and it was one of those statistical charts. And it was saying, wealthy blacks commit more crime than poor whites. Essentially saying it's not about socioeconomic status, it's about genetics. Black people are just genetically wired to be violent. And he made up this chart, he fabricated it, and then he posted it on 4chan, and the chart went viral, and all these racists on the internet were using it. The person who put it out there, he didn't care if it was true or not. He wanted to push a certain narrative. And the people who saw the chart, they didn't care about the truth either. They just want to push their own narrative as well. So this sort of manipulation happens. It's a very, very, very common, and it is extremely dangerous. Like, oh, we know for a fact that there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Look how many people died because of that one lie. Over 1 million people dead. And then you had the creation of ISIS, and that created even more dead. So, yeah, that's what I got from this film. So if you want to watch the movie, watch it. It is very disturbing. But if you watch it with the mentality that I have, and that is that, this film actually illustrates evil, then you can get a good message out of it. And in that case, the film does convey that message. If you look at it from the perspective of most of the people who watch the movie, and that is, oh, Jake Gyllenhaal's such a great actor, and the character he played, oh my god, it's so mysterious, then you're not watching the film with a good mindset, in my opinion. But anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.